Monday morning. It's just like any other. The sound of your alarm rudely awakens you from your slumber, spiking your blood pressure and accelerating your heart rate. You soon find your hands reaching for that all too familiar snooze button, and after repeated presses, you roll yourself out of bed and tell yourself that this will be the day that I'm productive. It's nearing exam season and you formulated the perfect study plan. You sit down on your desk and open your notes, but after staring at the screen for a few minutes, you think to yourself that revising the function of all these gastrointestinal hormones doesn't seem very appealing. You just don't feel like it. Instead, you open up Netflix and tell yourself that you'll start at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock turns into 11, then 12, which is pushed back to after lunch, and before you know it, the clock reads 5 p.m. and you look down to see that you've watched an entire season of Big Bang Theory. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Sebastian, a medical student from Australia. And this is probably a situation that you might have found yourself in, because this has certainly happened to me more than I would hoped, especially the bit about binging on Big Bang Theory. We want nothing more than a productive study day, but as our girl Taylor Swift would say, just because you made a good plan doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. Instead, it comes down to that inner feeling, that inner drive to want to get things done, to work on that assignment, to prepare for that upcoming exam, or to write that essay. That inner feeling can come from a nagging parent, it can come from a nearing due date, but ultimately it needs to come from you. A few weeks ago, I finished my mid-year exam and we had to do a lot of study to prepare for it. It was covering a lot of concepts and there was more than 150 lectures and seminars to be tested on. So I needed a good study schedule, a good study routine in the weeks leading up to the exam. And so in this video, I'll be sharing with you my study routine, how I stuck to it, and some ideas and concepts that help me stay motivated and also help me give me that inner drive to actually want to get things done. Before we begin, I just want to quickly say that this is by no means a comprehensive workbook. You don't have to follow to my schedule like a strict routine. All I want out of this is for you to take away some principles, some ideas to hopefully apply to your own framework, to your own study schedules, to whatever works for you. With any study routine, it needs to be personalized. And after doing a lot of trial and error with my studies in first year of medical school, I found out that there were specific times in the day where I was more productive or less productive, more active or just completely dead and couldn't get anything through to my brain. And I found that these times were early in the morning. So early in the morning, I was really alive, I was really ready to learn, and also after dinner. So using that knowledge that these are the times that I'm most productive, I decided to make sure that I was utilizing those times in the day effectively, that I was studying or at least contributing to an assignment or to a project. So when it came to forming my study routine, I tried to formulate it around these times. I'd work really hard from when I woke up, usually about 8 a.m., and I'd work from about 8:30 to lunchtime. And that 3 to 4 hour block would be a big chunk of what I did every day. Then I'd have lunch, and then I'd move to some more light revision in the early afternoon. And then when it hit about 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. that period, I get that afternoon low. I can't really think straight. Nothing's really going through. I kind of want to nap. And I'm not going to lie to you, some days I'd have a little bit of a power nap. But I'd also spend this time to try, just relax, have a break, watch some TV. And then after dinner, from that about 7 to 9 period, 6 to 9 period, that was another time when I was really super energized and I wanted to get a lot of things done. So I'd make sure that I would go over questions, I'd do practice stuff, because at the end of the night, I would make sure that I was loaded with all this information so that I can sleep on it and hopefully retain more when I woke up. I recently finished a book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, and he talks about the principles of memory retention through sleep, and how when you sleep, you're actually moving short-term memory from your hippocampus and entorhinal cortex to high centers in the brain for long-term memory storage. So to sum it up on the screen here, I would do 2 study sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening, and I would do some light revision, some like maybe Anki cards, that sort of thing throughout the day, and making sure that I was taking breaks when I was feeling really tired, but working hard when I was most energized. Okay, so we just talked about the structure of my study day, but how do I actually stay motivated and want to learn things? So at the beginning of this year, I wanted to get into really good habits. I wanted to start doing things every day unconsciously. And these were things like doing a minimum amount of study per day, finishing my Anki cards, doing some exercise. And so when I began, I started setting daily goals. These were just things that I'd written down as reminders of what I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish throughout the day. What was super useful for me was downloading this app called Done. And basically it's a habit tracker app where you can put this list of things that you want to do, these daily objectives, and by making an active effort of ticking them off, of seeing my progress every day. And like you would on a Snapchat streak, I started seeing my daily streaks. That I do something 8 days in a row, that I made sure that I finished my Anki cards for 2 weeks straight without a break. And it started making my study schedule more gamified, like I wanted to go out and actually complete these tasks to make sure that I maintain my streak, but also just the good feeling of I'm on a roll, this is becoming part of me. And what happened is that I no longer looked at studying and completing tasks as a chore, as something that I just had to do to pass an exam. But instead what happened is that I started forming more of an identity. An analogy I give is they're things like the things you pick up when learning to drive. At first, you'll make a mental note like you would your daily goal of doing your head check, of making sure that you're indicating before you turn lanes. But eventually, you're not even thinking about it anymore. It's just what you do, it's automatic. And so these daily goals then become automatic and then become habits, which form part of your identity. Task, habit, identity. If you learn to love the process, then acquiring the skills or the knowledge will come easy. It will just become second nature. The primary thing will actually be going out and doing it. And I think with any skill or with any task, trying to learn, 70% of it comes from the motivation, the inner want to actually get it done. And so doing these daily streaks and starting to form these identities about who you are and why you like doing the things that you're doing, I think that will really help when sticking to any study schedule. There was this corny little quote that my dad used to always tell me growing up, and it stuck with me to this day. And he said, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." I just told you that in order to form these habits, you need to be doing them daily. But sometimes things will pop up in our life that we can't control, and we just don't have the time to complete everything on our habit list. So what do we do? And I think a good rule to follow is the 2-day rule. And the rule is simple. You cannot miss completing a task 2 days in a row. In other words, if you forget to do your exercise or forget to finish your daily Anki cards, make sure that you do it the next day and don't miss 2 days in a row. You have to remind yourself that it's okay to take some time off, but if you get out of your groove, if you get out of this consistency mindset, what will happen is that 2 days of not exercising or not studying will become 3 days, and soon you'll forget about your whole routine in the first place. And so following to this 2-day rule at least gives you some flexibility to take some days off, but at the same time, make sure that you keep this momentum and keep forming these habits. Environment trumps motivation. Sometimes we forget how truly important our environment is in shaping our behaviors and shaping what we do. By creating an ideal study environment, you're reducing the friction to actually get started, you're making sure that you have no distractors, and you're streamlining your study so that it's easy to do. Make sure that your desk is clear, that on your computer you don't have video games to distract you, or you create a study space where you go in and you know in your head, you're telling your brain that I'm gonna work now. An example to think about is just eating habits. When you have a fruit bowl in the middle of your table, you're more likely to pick up an apple or a banana and eat it on the way to work, on the way to school. If you make it easy to study and just start, then you're more likely to keep going and gain that momentum so you don't stop. Find an accountability group. So when you're forming a study schedule, this is a very individual thing. But when it comes to acquiring knowledge and applying it in practice, you need some people to teach and some people to learn from. So having a group of friends that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can go to for help, that they can check up on you to make sure that you're sticking to your study schedule, that is a really helpful thing to have. It also gives you a chance to teach someone. And the Feynman technique sort of revolves around this idea that when you learn a concept, you teach someone else, and then you go back and make sure that whatever you're weak on or that you couldn't teach effectively, you revise it and then you try to teach it again. And for me, I have a few friends that I'll chat to on a Zoom call at the end of every week, and we'll talk about medicine, we'll talk about just life and how things are going. We'll update each other on what's going on in our lives. We might do a little bit of group study. Why it's so helpful is that it makes sure that I know where everybody else is going in terms of the semester. Are they finding the content hard, easy? I can compare with how they're feeling and then how I'm feeling. So having a group of friends to hold each other accountable will push you harder, make sure that you're working, and you can build each other up along the way. Just remember that at the end of the day, everybody studies differently. Some people will study 12 hours a day, others will study 2 hours a day and still do really well in the exam. What matters is that you find out what works for you, and hopefully some of the principles that I've talked about, you can employ them into your own study routine, and maybe they can give you a little bit of extra motivation when forming new habits or when learning new things. If you enjoyed the video, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to see more content like this. I'd love to hear some of your own study schedules. If it's the same as mine or different to mine, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. But thanks so much for watching, and until next time, this was Sebastian. Stay sharp.